Tonight, we journey into the heart of simple awareness. Ancient wisdom traditions discovered something remarkable. The peace we seek is not hidden in mystical experiences or distant mountaintops. It lives in the most unremarkable corners of our daily existence. Before we begin, take a moment to settle where you are. Notice the time, the place, your breath. What if everything you're searching for is already here? What if transformation doesn't require becoming someone different, but simply recognizing who you already are? This evening's exploration invites you to see your life with fresh eyes, not by adding something new, but by removing the filters that prevent you from seeing what's already present. Let's begin this gentle journey together. Part 1. The simplicity beneath complexity. There's an ancient saying that seems almost too obvious to hold wisdom. When thirsty, drink water. When weary, rest. When cold, put on a coat. This teaching points to something called natural responsiveness, the wisdom that lives beneath our endless thinking. Look closely at how you actually move through your days. When thirsty, do you simply drink? Or do you tell yourself you'll hydrate after finishing just one more task? When exhausted, do you rest? Or do you push through with coffee and determination? We've learned to override our natural responses, to complicate what is fundamentally simple, to think about living instead of simply living. We carry elaborate ideas about proper self-care, optimal routines, correct spiritual practices. These concepts pile up like snow until we can no longer hear the quiet voice of intuitive knowing. Natural responsiveness points to something beneath all this mental noise, a way of being that responds directly to life without the interference of excessive analysis. The story of Marcus. Marcus had spent 15 years studying wellness practices. He practiced advanced breathing techniques, followed complex nutritional protocols, and maintained elaborate self-optimization routines. His mornings began 2 hours before dawn with specific stretching sequences, followed by cold exposure therapy, then carefully timed supplement intake. Every meal was calculated. Every action had its prescribed method and spiritual significance. He tracked his sleep cycles, monitored his heart rate variability, and logged his meditation sessions. Despite this dedication, Marcus felt increasingly anxious and depleted. He worried constantly about whether he was following the protocols correctly. He lay awake, wondering if missing one session would derail his progress. His partner would say, "You seem more stressed now than before all this optimization." But Marcus would reply that she didn't understand the importance of dedication to improvement. One autumn, Marcus decided to visit a friend named Samuel, who lived simply in a small cabin by a lake. Samuel had no fancy routines, no optimization protocols, no tracking devices, yet people spoke of him as someone who possessed genuine peace. When Marcus arrived exhausted from his journey, Samuel looked up from splitting wood and smiled. "You look tired, friend." Marcus was tired. "I've come seeking advice," he said. "I practice diligently, but I feel further from peace than when I began." Samuel nodded. "Come inside. You must be hungry." The cabin was simple. A bed, a wood stove, basic cooking tools. No fitness equipment, no supplement collection, no optimization technology. Nothing suggesting someone working on self-improvement. This surprised Marcus. How could someone live peacefully without the tools of optimization? Samuel began preparing a simple meal: rice, vegetables from his garden, herbs he'd foraged. He moved without hurry or ceremony, simply doing what needed doing. No elaborate mindfulness, no performance of presence, just a man making food because someone was hungry. "Tell me about your practices," Samuel said as they ate. Marcus described his elaborate schedule: the breathing protocols, the supplement timing, the sleep optimization, the tracking, the metrics. As he spoke, he realized how exhausting even the descriptions sounded. Samuel listened quietly. When Marcus finished, the old friend was silent for a moment. Then he asked, "When you're hungry, do you eat?" "Well, yes, but I must eat according to specific timing windows and macronutrient ratios. I must maintain awareness of—" Samuel held up a hand gently. "When you're hungry, do you eat?" Marcus felt confused. "I just explained how I eat with optimal protocols and proper—" "That's not what I asked. When you're hungry, do you actually eat? Or do you perform elaborate rituals around eating while hunger remains?" Something in Marcus became defensive. Optimal nutrition is important. Many experts emphasize this. Samuel smiled sadly. "Your body knows when it needs nourishment. It doesn't need a protocol. It needs food. You haven't eaten a simple meal in years. You've been managing nutrition." They sat in silence. Finally, Samuel said, "You've made life incredibly complicated. You've turned every natural function into a performance. No wonder you're exhausted. You're no longer living. You're executing an optimization algorithm." "But if I stop my protocols, how will I maintain my health? How will I achieve my potential?" Do you think health is something you manufacture through elaborate systems? That if you follow enough protocols, you'll earn it like a wage? Samuel shook his head. Your body already knows what to do. When tired, it says rest. When hungry, it says eat. But you've buried this wisdom under so many complicated ideas that you can no longer hear it. He looked at Marcus. Stay with me for a few days. Don't optimize anything. Just live. Eat when hungry, sleep when tired, move when you feel like moving. See what happens when you stop trying so hard to perfect yourself. Marcus stayed for 5 days. At first, abandoning his routines felt almost frightening. His mind insisted he should be tracking, measuring, optimizing. The first morning, he woke at his usual early hour and started to begin his protocols. But Samuel was still asleep. Marcus lay back down. His body was still tired, so he slept. When he woke again, sunlight streamed through the window. He felt rested in a way he hadn't in years. The days passed simply. Samuel gathered firewood when the pile grew low. He tended his small garden. He cooked simple meals when hungry. He sat by the lake watching the light change. Sometimes he hummed to himself. Sometimes he napped in the afternoon sun. There was no drama, no significance. Just a man living, doing what needed doing, responding to each moment without complication. On the third day, Marcus woke feeling genuinely refreshed. He had slept when tired, instead of forcing himself up for protocols. He ate a simple breakfast when hungry, instead of following timing windows. He went outside and helped Samuel collect kindling. They walked quietly through the woods. The morning air was crisp. Birds called from high branches. Nothing special was happening. Yet Marcus felt more at ease than during any of his intense optimization sessions. "Samuel," he said as they walked, Do you ever do any formal wellness practices? Sometimes I stretch when it feels right, usually in the morning after I wake naturally. I stretch because it feels good, not because I'm optimizing anything. Do you track your health metrics? I pay attention to how I feel. If I'm tired, I rest more. If I'm restless, I move more. My body tells me what it needs. I don't need devices to interpret my own experience. That evening, sitting by the fire, Marcus said, "I think I'm beginning to understand. I've been making life into a problem that needs solving through optimization. But life isn't a problem. It's just life. My body tells me what it needs. I only have to listen and respond." Samuel nodded. Your natural wisdom is more reliable than all your protocols. It has always known what to do. You only needed to stop interfering with it. When Marcus returned home, he put away most of his tracking devices and protocol charts. He kept a simple life. When hungry, he ate. When tired, he slept. When work needed doing, he did it. When rest felt right, he rested. He stopped carrying the burden of constant optimization, and in letting go of that burden, he found the health and peace he'd been seeking through 15 years of complicated effort. Part 2. The Wisdom of Ordinary Work. There once lived a gardener named Elena, who tended a community plot. Each day she would rise with the sun and care for the growing things. She planted seeds in spring, watered and weeded through summer, harvested in autumn, and rested in winter, repairing tools and planning for the coming year. Her life followed natural rhythms and the needs of the land. Elena had a neighbor, Robert, who had recently become interested in personal development. He attended expensive seminars, read countless books on consciousness, and practiced various techniques to elevate his awareness. One afternoon, Robert came to Elena's garden and found her pulling weeds in the hot sun. Her hands were stained with soil. She worked methodically, moving down each row with patient attention. Robert had just returned from a 10-day meditation intensive. He was eager to share what he'd learned. "You should attend these retreats," he said. "I've learned methods for achieving higher consciousness. The facilitator showed us how to transcend ordinary awareness and access peak states." Elena continued pulling weeds as she listened. "That sounds interesting," she said without looking up. "You seem calm," Robert continued. "But imagine how evolved you could become if you learned these techniques. You could achieve real transformation, not just ordinary contentment." Elena sat back and wiped her forehead. She looked at Robert, who stood at the edge of the garden in clean clothes, having showered off the world before beginning his spiritual journey. "What's wrong with ordinary contentment?" she asked. "Nothing's wrong with it, but there are higher states available, states of bliss and expanded consciousness beyond normal experience. Don't you want to achieve something extraordinary?" Elena looked at the vegetables growing in neat rows, tomatoes climbing their stakes, squash spreading their leaves, carrots pushing through the soil. She looked at the rich, dark earth alive with worms and beetles. She looked at her stained, scarred hands. "When I wake each morning, I feel what needs doing. The plants tell me if they need water. The soil tells me if it needs amendment. My body tells me when to rest. I don't fight what's happening. I don't wish things were different. I simply respond to what each day asks. Where would I fit your special states into this? Robert felt frustrated. But you're just living an ordinary life, planting and weeding and harvesting the same thing every day. Where's the transcendence in that? What could be more complete than this? Elena asked simply. She held up a handful of soil. In this earth, life grows. Seeds become food. Food becomes nourishment. Nourishment becomes energy. Energy becomes work. Work tends the earth again. I'm part of this cycle. When I plant, I'm fully planting. When I harvest, I'm fully harvesting. My mind doesn't wander elsewhere. It's here, doing what's needed. Isn't this peace? But you haven't transcended anything. You're still caught in ordinary consciousness. Eleanor smiled and returned to her weeding. Perhaps your extraordinary states are what keep you from being fully here. You attend retreats to find peace, instead of being peaceful where you are. You learn techniques to achieve calm, instead of simply being calm. You seek higher states, instead of fully inhabiting this one. She pulled another weed, examining its roots. I don't need to transcend my ordinary awareness. My ordinary awareness, when I don't interfere with it, knows exactly what to do. It tends these vegetables. It rests when tired. It eats when hungry. It responds to rain by seeking shelter and to sun by feeling grateful. What more is there? Robert sat down at the edge of the garden. He thought about his seminars and retreats, always seeking states beyond his normal awareness, always trying to achieve something special, always feeling his ordinary life was lacking something to be transcended through techniques. I think, he said slowly, that I've been running from my life instead of living it. I keep going to these events because I believe peace is somewhere other than here. That wisdom is something other than responding naturally to what's in front of me. Elena nodded. The retreats may help some people, but for me, this garden is my practice. These vegetables are my teachers. My work is simply tending what needs tending, not seeking anything beyond this. Not achieving special states, just being here, hands in the soil, doing what the day asks. Robert took off his jacket. May I help? The garden is always here. The work is always here. You're welcome anytime. Part 3. Your everyday awareness is enough. There's an ancient teaching that sounds impossible when you first hear it. The awareness you have right now is already complete. Not your awareness after years of practice. Not your awareness in some future enlightened state. This awareness right now, exactly as it is. We reject this because it seems too simple. We think awakening must be something extraordinary, something we don't currently possess. So we search everywhere except the one place it actually exists, right here in ordinary awareness itself. The story of Maya. Maya had been practicing meditation at a center for 7 years. She meditated faithfully, studied teachings, followed all the guidelines carefully. Despite her sincerity and dedication, she felt no closer to awakening than when she began. One day, the center received a visit from an older teacher named Chen, who had trained there decades ago but now lived simply in the countryside. Chen had a reputation for direct insight. Maya decided this was her chance. She found Chen sitting under a tree, watching leaves move in the breeze. Master Chen, may I ask a question? Of course. Maya sat down. I've been practicing here for 7 years. I meditate faithfully. I study the teachings. I try to cultivate wisdom, but I don't feel awakened. I don't feel like I've found what I came seeking. What am I missing?" Chen looked at her kindly. "What brought you to ask me this question just now?" Maya was confused. "I saw you sitting here and thought it was a good opportunity to receive guidance." "Before you saw me, what were you doing?" "I was sweeping the walkway." "How did you know the walkway needed sweeping?" "I saw leaves had fallen during the night." "So you saw the leaves, recognized what needed doing, decided to do it, and did it?" "Yes." "Who did all that?" Maya felt puzzled. "I did." This awareness that saw the leaves, that knew what needed doing, that decided to act and acted. Where is this awareness? Can you show it to me? Maya opened her mouth but couldn't point to anything specific. Her body had done the sweeping, but was her body this awareness? Her mind had made the decision, but where was this mind? "I don't understand what you're asking," she admitted. Chen smiled. "Right now, you're hearing my voice. You're feeling the breeze. You're aware of thoughts moving through your mind. This awareness that knows all these things, this is your everyday mind. It's been with you since you woke this morning. It was there when you saw the leaves. It was there when you decided to sweep. It's here now as we talk. This awareness is not something you need to find or achieve. It's already present, already functioning, already complete." "But this is just my normal consciousness," Maya protested. "This isn't awakening. Awakening must be something special, something beyond ordinary experience." "Why must it be beyond ordinary experience? Who told you that what you already have isn't enough?" Chen picked up a small pebble. "If I told you this pebble is precious, would that change its nature? No, it's just a pebble. And if I told you it's worthless, would that change what it is? No. Your everyday awareness is the same. It is what it is, regardless of what you think about it. When you call it just ordinary consciousness and reject it as insufficient, you don't change it. You only create suffering by wanting it to be something other than what it is. When you accept it as it is and stop searching for something else, the suffering ends. This acceptance, this stopping of the search, this is what people call awakening. Maya sat quietly, trying to absorb this. She had spent 7 years believing awakening was a special state she needed to achieve. Now this teacher was telling her that her everyday awareness, the mind she used to sweep walkways and eat meals, was already complete. How can I practice then? If I already have what I'm seeking, what's the point? Practice isn't about getting somewhere you're not. It's about fully being where you are. You meditate not to create a special state, but to recognize the awareness that's already present. You study not to gain something you lack, but to clear away confusion that prevents you from seeing what you already have. Chen stood slowly. Pay attention today, Maya. Notice this awareness that knows you're alive, that experiences whatever arises. Don't judge it or try to change it. Just notice it. This noticing is the practice, and what you notice is already awake, whether you believe it or not. After Chen left, Maya remained under the tree. Could it really be this simple? Could the awareness she had right now actually be what she'd been seeking? She decided to follow Chen's instruction. For the rest of the day, she simply noticed her awareness. When she walked to the meditation hall, she noticed the awareness that knew she was walking. the feeling of her feet on the path, the movement of her body, the sound of gravel. All of this was known by something. What was this something that knew? When she sat in meditation, she noticed the awareness that knew she was sitting. Thoughts arose about whether she was doing this correctly. The awareness noticed the thoughts. Worries came about her progress. The awareness witnessed the worries. Judgments appeared about this exercise seeming pointless. The awareness observed the judgments. Each time, the awareness itself remained unchanged, simply witnessing whatever passed through it. When she ate dinner, she noticed the awareness that tasted the food. The bowl felt cool in her hands. The rice had a subtle sweetness. Her body knew when it had eaten enough. All this information came through awareness, not through thinking about awareness, but through awareness itself, which was simply present, simply functioning. As the day continued, something began to shift. She realized this awareness had a quality of being already at peace. It wasn't disturbed by her thoughts or feelings. It simply observed them arising and passing. It didn't need anything to be different. It was complete in itself. When worry arose, the awareness simply noticed it without being troubled. The worry was there, moving through awareness like a cloud through sky. But the awareness itself was like the sky, untroubled by what passed through it. She realized something remarkable. The thoughts and emotions she'd been trying to control or eliminate weren't the problem. They arose and passed naturally. The problem was that she'd been identifying with them, believing she was her thoughts and emotions rather than the awareness that witnessed them. When she rested in the awareness itself, rather than being caught in what awareness witnessed, peace was already there. Part 4. Before and After. There's a saying in contemplative traditions: before awakening, chop vegetables and wash dishes. After awakening, chop vegetables and wash dishes. When people first hear this, they feel confused or disappointed. If nothing changes, what's the point? If we still do the same ordinary tasks, what's the value? But this teaching points to something essential. Awakening doesn't transport us to a different realm where we no longer need to do daily tasks. It doesn't make us special beings who float above ordinary life. The vegetables still need chopping. The dishes still need washing. What changes is not the tasks themselves, but how we meet them. Before awakening, we chop vegetables while wishing we were doing something else. We wash dishes while thinking about more important things. Our minds resist the simplicity of what's required. After awakening, we simply chop vegetables. We simply wash dishes. The tasks remain the same, but the mental struggle around them dissolves. We're no longer split between what we're doing and where we think we should be. The story of Daniel. Daniel joined a meditation community with a burning desire for transformation. He imagined that once he awakened, his life would be completely different. He would be peaceful and wise, free from ordinary concerns. The community had a daily routine: wake before dawn, sit in meditation, work in silence, eat simple meals, study, more meditation, sleep. The same schedule every day, year after year. Daniel threw himself into meditation practice. He would sit for hours, certain that if he just sat long enough with enough intensity, awakening would come. During work periods, when he was supposed to be washing dishes or sweeping, he would rush through the tasks so he could return to what he considered real practice, sitting meditation. The other practitioners seemed to work with steady attention, giving their full energy to whatever task was at hand. Daniel found this puzzling. Why were they wasting time on mundane chores when they could be meditating? An older practitioner named Grace often worked alongside Daniel. Grace had been at the community for 30 years. She moved slowly now, but brought careful attention to everything she did. When sweeping, she swept with complete focus. When washing dishes, she gave herself fully to washing dishes. One day, Daniel was rushing through dishwashing, clattering bowls, splashing water. Grace came over and stood quietly nearby. "Why are you in such a hurry?" she asked gently. "I want to finish so I can meditate. I didn't come here to spend my time washing dishes." Grace picked up one of the bowls Daniel had washed. She examined it, then held it out. There were still bits of food stuck to the side. "When you wash dishes," Grace said, "do you wash them? Or do you think about meditating while your hands go through the motions?" Daniel felt embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I'll wash it again." "I'm not criticizing you. I'm asking, where is your mind when you wash dishes?" "My mind is on my practice, on meditation, on awakening." "And where are your hands?" "Here, washing dishes." "So your mind is in one place and your body is in another. How can you be at peace when you're split like this?" Grace set down the bowl. Practice isn't about dividing your time between important spiritual activities and unimportant daily tasks. Practice is bringing your whole attention to whatever you're actually doing. When you meditate, meditate. When you wash dishes, wash dishes. But washing dishes isn't spiritual practice. It's just cleaning. Grace smiled. Who decided this? Who drew a line and said meditation is sacred, but cleaning is ordinary? Any activity done with full presence is practice. Any moment given complete attention is sacred. When you wash a bowl with your whole attention, you're practicing. When you sit in meditation, thinking about how much more important meditation is than washing bowls, you're not practicing. She picked up a bowl and began washing it herself. Her movements were slow and careful. She felt the curve of the ceramic under her hand. She made sure every bit of food was removed. She rinsed thoroughly. She set it gently to dry. "This bowl," Grace said, "holds food that nourishes everyone here. Treating it with respect, cleaning it well, this is serving the community. How is this less important than sitting on a cushion?" Over the following weeks, Daniel tried to practice what Grace had shown him. It was harder than expected. His mind wandered constantly. While washing one dish, he'd be thinking about the next. While sweeping, he'd be planning what to do after. But gradually, he began to notice something. When he could bring full attention to the task, even for a few moments, there was a quality of peace in it. The warm water on his hands while washing dishes, the rhythmic motion of the broom while sweeping, the satisfaction of seeing a clean counter. These simple things held their own completeness when he was actually present for them. One morning, Daniel was washing large pots after breakfast. They were heavy, with food stuck to the bottom, usually his least favorite task. But on this morning, something was different. He wasn't thinking about disliking it. He wasn't planning what he'd do afterward. He found himself simply doing it, just scrubbing this pot, feeling the resistance of stuck food against the scrubber, applying more effort where needed, feeling satisfaction when a stubborn bit came free. His whole attention was absorbed. There was just this pot, this water, these hands, this moment. When he finished, he realized something remarkable. For those 15 minutes, his mind had been completely quiet. No worries about progress, no judgments about practicing correctly, no thoughts about being somewhere else. Just complete presence with what he was actually doing. This was the same quality of peace he sometimes touched in meditation. That sense of being fully here, fully alive, not wanting anything to be different. But it had come not from sitting on a cushion, but from washing pots with full attention. The activity didn't matter. The presence mattered. Part 5. The Sacred in Simple Work. A woman named Yuki worked as a house cleaner. Each day she would go to various homes and sweep floors, dust shelves, wash windows, scrub surfaces, and organize spaces. Work was tiring and not well paid. She often felt discouraged, thinking her life lacked meaning compared to people with more important positions. One of the families she worked for had invited a visiting teacher named Thomas to stay with them. Thomas was known for his practical approach to contemplative living. One afternoon, Yuki was cleaning the guest room where Thomas was staying. She worked quietly, not wanting to disturb him. He noticed her and spoke. "You work with care." Yuki was startled. She hadn't expected him to address her. "Thank you, sir. I try to do my work properly." "Why do you clean houses?" he asked. "It's my livelihood. I have no other skills." "That's not what I asked. Why do you clean? What's the purpose of your work?" Yuki thought about this. "To make things clean, I suppose. To keep the house orderly." "And why does that matter?" She found the question strange. Because people can't live well in dirty, disordered spaces. Clean surroundings create peace. They allow people to think clearly and live comfortably. Thomas nodded. "So, your work creates conditions for others to live well. You serve the peace and well-being of everyone in this household. How is this not sacred work?" Yuki looked at him uncertainly. "But I'm just a cleaner. This is ordinary work, not spiritual practice." Work that serves others and causes no harm is spiritual practice. When you clean this room, you do it so I can rest well. When you clean the kitchen, you make it possible for the family to prepare nourishing meals. When you bring order to the household, you support everyone who lives here. This is compassionate action. He gestured around the room. "Look at what you've done here. The floor is swept clean. The surfaces are dusted. The linens are fresh. You've created a peaceful space. Someone will benefit from your care and effort. How can you call this unimportant?" Yuki felt tears rising unexpectedly. For years, she'd felt her work was beneath notice, that her life lacked the significance of people with impressive positions. But Thomas was showing her that her daily work, when done with care, was already meaningful service. "But I don't meditate or study teachings," she said. "I just clean houses." When you sweep this floor, are you thinking about other things, or are you present for the sweeping? Usually, I'm thinking about other things. My worries, what I need to do next, my concerns about life. There's your practice. Bring your full attention to your work. When you sweep, just sweep. When you dust, just dust. Let your work become your meditation, Not thinking about how your life should be different, but giving yourself completely to what you're actually doing. This is the path. Thomas stood and walked to the window Yuki had cleaned until it was perfectly clear. This window is so clean, I can see through it easily. I can appreciate the view outside. Your care made this possible. You think this is just cleaning, but you've given me a gift. You've served my practice by creating a peaceful environment. After Thomas left the room, Yuki sat for a moment with what he'd said. Her work wasn't separate from spiritual life. It was spiritual life. Every floor she swept, every surface she cleaned, all of it created conditions for others to live well. All of it was service. All of it mattered. From that day forward, Yuki approached her work differently. The tasks remained the same, but she brought a new quality of attention to them. At first, her mind would wander back to old patterns, thinking about her problems, worrying about money, feeling discouraged. But each time she noticed, she would gently bring her attention back to what she was actually doing. Back to the cloth in her hand, back to this moment, this task. When she swept with care, making sure to clean thoroughly, getting into corners she used to rush past. She found satisfaction in doing the work well, in knowing she was truly serving the household. When she washed windows, she worked until they were perfectly clear, until someone looking through them would barely notice the glass. Each window became an opportunity to create clarity. When she organized spaces, she thought about the people who would use them. She placed items where they could be easily found, where they made sense. This simple consideration turned organizing into an act of kindness. She stopped thinking of her work as something to get through and started seeing it as something she offered. Each clean room was a gift to the people who lived there. Each organized space created ease in their daily lives. Her work mattered because it served others. She also found that when she gave full attention to her work, she felt more peaceful. The constant mental chatter about her inadequate life quieted. The comparing herself to others faded. She was simply here, cleaning, doing what needed doing. When she finished cleaning a room and stepped back to look at it, she could feel a sense of completion. This room was clean because of her care. Someone would walk into it and feel peaceful because of her work. This was enough. This was meaningful. Years later, someone asked Yuki if she'd ever considered a different career, something more prestigious or better paid. She smiled. "I've found my practice in ordinary work. I clean houses, and in cleaning houses, I practice presence. I serve others, and I find peace. Any honest work done with care is part of the path. Why would I need something more impressive? This simple work is enough." Part 6. Nothing special. There's a quality that many people find disappointing when they first encounter authentic contemplative teaching. They arrive expecting profound wisdom, mysterious insights, dramatic revelations that will transform everything. What they often receive instead is simple, direct instruction that sounds almost too ordinary to be valuable. Drink your tea, sweep the floor, pay attention to what you're doing. A student once traveled for months to meet a renowned teacher. When he finally arrived and asked for the deepest teaching, the teacher said, "Have you eaten breakfast?" "Yes," the student replied. "Then go wash your bowl." The student was confused and frustrated. He'd journeyed so far for this, but the teacher had given him exactly what he needed, though it would take years to understand it. Contemplative teaching points again and again to the ordinary as complete in itself, not as a stepping stone to something better, not as practice for some future attainment, but as already whole, already perfect, already enough. The story of Sophie. Sophie had been practicing at a meditation center for 3 years. She was sincere and dedicated, attending every session, sitting in meditation daily, studying carefully. She had learned many sophisticated concepts. She could discuss them with intelligence and insight. But Sophie felt frustrated. Despite all her learning, despite dedicated practice, she didn't feel transformed. She still experienced ordinary thoughts and feelings, ordinary problems and concerns. She had expected that by now, after 3 years of serious practice, something dramatic would have shifted. The center had an older teacher named William, who lived in a small cottage at the edge of the grounds. He rarely gave formal teachings anymore, but he was respected as someone with deep understanding. Sophie decided to visit him. She found him sitting outside his cottage in the afternoon sun, drinking tea. The setting was completely ordinary. No incense, no special cushions, just an old man with a cup of tea, watching birds move through trees. "Master William, may I speak with you?" "Of course. Sit down. Would you like some tea?" Sophie sat beside him. "Yes, thank you." He poured tea from a plain clay pot into a plain cup. The tea was simple, nothing special. They sat quietly for a few moments. Finally, Sophie spoke. "I've been practicing here for 3 years. I meditate every day. I study the teachings, but I don't feel any different than when I arrived. I thought spiritual practice would transform me, that I would achieve some special state. But I still feel like the same ordinary person. What am I doing wrong?" William sipped his tea slowly. "What did you hope to become?" "I don't know exactly. Someone wiser, more peaceful, someone who has transcended ordinary concerns." "I see. And right now, sitting here drinking tea, what are you experiencing?" Sophie paused. "I'm sitting here with you, drinking tea, feeling the warmth of the sun, hearing the birds. Is this not enough?" "But this is just ordinary experience. This isn't awakening." William smiled. "Who told you awakening is something other than ordinary experience? Who said it must be dramatic or special or make you feel transformed?" "Well, all the stories about the great teachers, their insights, their awakening experiences, surely it's something extraordinary." The stories make awakening sound impressive because stories require drama to be interesting. But the actual experience is nothing dramatic at all. It's exactly this. He gestured to the tea, the afternoon, the simple fact of sitting here. Just this, without adding anything to it, without needing it to be special. Sophie felt confused. "But I've been doing this my whole life, drinking tea, sitting in the sun. If this is awakening, why did I need 3 years of practice?" "You've been sitting and drinking tea, yes. But have you been doing it without wanting it to be something else? Without judging it as insufficient? Without using it as an opportunity to think about more important things?" He looked at her directly. "Right now, as you drink this tea, are you actually tasting it? Or are you thinking about awakening and whether you've achieved it? Sophie realized he was right. Even now, she wasn't really present. She was thinking about her practice, her progress, what she was lacking. She was using this moment to worry about other moments. "You've spent 3 years practicing, which is good," William said. "But you've been practicing to become someone special, rather than to fully be who you already are. You've been practicing to achieve extraordinary states, rather than to fully inhabit this ordinary one." He set his cup down gently. Awakening isn't about becoming someone else. It's about ceasing to reject who you already are. It's not about transcending life. It's about fully entering it. Sophie looked into her tea. Steam rose in soft curls. She lifted the cup again, this time not to analyze, not to compare, but simply to feel the warmth in her hands, to smell the faint earthiness of the leaves, to taste the quiet bitterness on her tongue. For the first time in years, she wasn't using the moment as a means to something else. She was just here. William watched her in silence. After a while, he said softly, "This is the whole teaching. Nothing more is needed." The Scholar and the Mountain Hermit. There once lived a man named Tarek, a devoted scholar of spiritual texts. For 20 years he studied sutras, practiced complex visualizations, counted breaths, and followed meticulous rituals. His day began before dawn with breathing exercises, followed by hours of seated meditation, mantra recitations, and mindful eating, each grain of rice contemplated before tasting. Yet, despite all this discipline, Tarek felt increasingly weary and restless. He doubted whether he was doing it right. He lay awake, replaying the day, worried he had merely performed the motions without true presence. His wife once said, "You seem more burdened now than before you began this path." But Tarek replied, "You don't understand. Enlightenment demands sacrifice." One autumn, he journeyed to visit a hermit named Leo, said to dwell deep in the mountains with genuine insight. After 2 days of travel, Tarek reached a modest hut. There were no statues, no incense, no meditation cushions, just a sleeping mat, a fire pit, and simple clay bowls. Leo greeted him with a warm smile. "You look exhausted. Come, let's eat." As Leo prepared a meal, washing wild greens, stirring rice in a wooden pot, Tarek watched, puzzled. There was no chanting, no slow-motion mindfulness, just natural, unhurried movement. Over tea, Tarek described his elaborate routine, the breath counts, the visualizations, the prostrations. As he spoke, he heard how heavy it all sounded, even to himself. Leo listened quietly. Then he asked, "When you're hungry, do you eat?" "Well, yes, but mindfully. I contemplate impermanence, the labor behind the food." Leo raised a gentle hand. "No, when you're hungry, do you eat, or do you perform rituals while hunger waits?" Tarek bristled. "Mindful eating is the practice." "But the Buddha ate when he was hungry," Leo said softly. "He didn't turn nourishment into a performance." They ate in silence. The rice was tender, the greens fresh. For the first time in years, Tarek tasted his food, not his thoughts about tasting. After the meal, Leo washed the bowls without ceremony. "Is this your practice?" Tarek asked. "Just living?" "What else is there?" Leo replied. "When dishes are dirty, I wash them. When I'm tired, I rest. When someone arrives, I make tea. Where is there room for anything but practice?" Tarek stayed for 5 days. He slept when tired, ate when hungry, walked in the forest without labeling it meditation, and slowly the weight of his spiritual striving lifted. When he returned home, he kept only a few texts. He let go of rigid routines. He ate, slept, worked, and found, to his quiet astonishment, that peace had been there all along. The farmer and the seeker. In a quiet village lived Mira, a farmer who rose with the sun to tend her crops. Her life moved with the seasons, planting in spring, weeding in summer, harvesting in autumn, resting in winter. Her neighbor Javan, a merchant turned spiritual seeker, often visited after returning from meditation retreats. "You seem so calm," he once said. "But imagine the peace you'd feel if you learned advanced techniques. You could transcend ordinary life." Mira looked up from her row of carrots, hands in the soil. "What's wrong with ordinary life?" "It's just ordinary," Javan said. "Don't you want something more?" Mira held up a handful of rich, dark earth. "In this soil, life grows. I plant, I weed, I harvest. My mind doesn't wander. It's here, doing what's needed. Is this not peace?" Javan frowned. "But you haven't transcended anything." "Perhaps," Mira smiled. "Your extraordinary states are what keep you from being here." That afternoon, Javan knelt beside her and began pulling weeds. At first, his mind judged the work as beneath him, but as the sun moved across the sky, his thoughts quieted. He noticed the smell of damp soil, the rhythm of his hands, the breeze on his neck. Hours passed. He hadn't thought once about enlightenment. "At sunset," he said, "I feel settled, like I've been where I actually am for the first time in years." Mira nodded. "This is ordinary mind. Nothing special, just being here, doing what needs doing. Your retreats may offer insights, but this is already complete." From then on, Javan returned each day, not to seek, but to help. And in that simple work, he found what he'd been chasing for years. The monk who swept floors. A young monk named Dai entered a monastery, burning with desire for enlightenment. He believed awakening would come through intense meditation and saw chores as distractions. Every day, he rushed through sweeping, dishwashing, and gardening so he could return to the meditation hall. An elder monk, Hiro, who had lived at the monastery for 40 years, worked slowly and carefully. One day, as Day hurried through the courtyard with a broom, Hiro asked, "Why the rush?" "I want to get back to real practice," Day replied. Hiro paused. "And what are you doing now?" "Just sweeping. Maintenance." "Just maintenance," Hiro repeated gently. "Tell me, what do you hope meditation will give you?" "Peace, clarity, freedom." "And what's stopping you from finding that while sweeping?" Day had no answer. Over time, Day began to bring attention to his tasks. One afternoon, as he swept under warm sunlight, he realized his mind was quiet. No striving, no judgment, just the sound of bristles on stone, the pile of leaves growing. In that moment, he understood. Enlightenment isn't about changing your activity, it's about changing your relationship to it. Before awakening, chop wood, carry water. After awakening, chop wood, carry water. The tasks don't change, only the presence within them. The cleaner who discovered sacred work. Leela cleaned homes for a living. She often felt her work was meaningless compared to scholars or monks. One day, while cleaning the guest room of a visiting teacher named Master Ren, he said, "You work with care." Leela bowed shyly. It's just what I do." "Why do you clean?" he asked. "For money," she said. "No. Why does it matter?" She hesitated. "Because clean spaces help people live well." "Exactly," he said. "You create peace for others. You support their rest, their clarity, their practice. How is this not sacred?" Leela's eyes filled with tears. For years, she'd seen her work as invisible. Now, she saw it as service. From that day, she swept with attention. She washed windows until they sparkled. She arranged shelves thoughtfully, not to impress, but to care. Her work hadn't changed, but now every task was an offering, and in that offering she found peace. The potter and the clay. In a quiet village nestled beside a winding river, there lived a potter named Niran. Each morning he rose with the sun, walked to the riverbank, and gathered clay with his bare hands. Back in his workshop, he'd sit at his wheel and shape bowls, cups, and jars, each piece born from the rhythm of his breath and the motion of his hands. Niran never signed his work. He didn't believe in fame or legacy. "Clay becomes vessel," he'd say, "not because I make it special, but because it's needed." One day, a young seeker named Elan came to the village, searching for a master who could teach the path of awakening. He'd heard whispers of Niran, not as a monk or a scholar, but as someone who knew peace. Elan watched Niran for hours from the edge of the workshop. The potter didn't chant. He didn't bow. He simply worked, hands moving, eyes soft, posture steady. Finally, Elan approached. "They say you've realized the truth. Will you teach me?" Niran looked up, clay still spinning beneath his fingers. "What truth?" "The truth of enlightenment, of freedom." The potter paused the wheel. "Do you see this bowl?" "Yes." "Is it empty or full?" "It's empty." "Good," Niran said, placing it carefully on the drying rack. "Then it can hold tea. A full bowl is useless. An empty one, ready." Elan frowned. "But what does that have to do with enlightenment?" Niran smiled. "Enlightenment isn't something you fill yourself with. It's the space that's already there, when you stop stuffing it with ideas." He dipped his hands into water, rinsed off the clay. "Sit, watch, don't seek, just be." Elan stayed for a month. At first, he waited for secret teachings, hidden symbols, profound rituals, but none came. Only the sound of the wheel, the smell of wet earth, the silence between breaths. One afternoon, while helping to carry finished pots to the market, Elan tripped. A bowl shattered on the stone path. He froze, heart pounding. "I'm sorry, I've ruined your work." Niran knelt and picked up the pieces. "It was just a bowl," he said gently. "Now it's shards. Both are true. Neither needs fixing." In that moment, something in Elan cracked open. Not like the bowl, but like a seed finally splitting to let life through. He hadn't found a grand revelation. He'd found acceptance for broken things, for ordinary moments, for himself. When he left, Niran gave him a simple cup, unpainted, unmarked. "Whenever you drink from this," the potter said, "remember, usefulness isn't in being perfect. It's in being present." The teacher who never spoke. In a mountain town, there lived a woman known only as Amma, meaning mother. She never gave lectures. She never wrote books, yet people traveled for days just to sit in her courtyard. Why? Because in her presence, minds grew quiet. Amma spent her days tending herbs, sweeping her stone path, feeding stray cats, and offering water to travelers. She moved slowly, never rushed, and when someone spoke to her, she listened, not just with her ears, but with her whole being. A monk named Varin once came, frustrated by years of fruitless meditation. "I've practiced every method," he said, "but my mind still races. How do you stay so calm?" Amma handed him a broom. Varin blinked. "A broom?" "Sweep the courtyard," she said simply. He swept, angrily at first, thinking it was a test, but as the dust cleared, so did his thoughts. One stroke, another. No mantra, no goal, just movement. When he finished, he stood breathless, and for the first time in years, still. Amma didn't praise him. She didn't explain. She just handed him a cup of warm barley tea. That was the teaching. Varin returned every day for a week. No words were exchanged, only sweeping, only tea, only presence. On his last morning, he bowed deeply. "Thank you. You've shown me more than any scripture." Amma shook her head. "I showed you nothing. You remembered." And that's the secret. Ordinary mind isn't given. It's remembered. The weaver's thread. Maela wove tapestries for temples, using threads dyed with berries, roots, and petals. Her work was intricate. Scenes of mountains, rivers, birds in flight. Pilgrims wept when they saw them, saying, "This is divine." But Maela never saw her work as spiritual. "It's just thread," she'd say. "I pull it through, that's all." One winter, a philosopher named Torin visited. He'd written volumes on the nature of reality. "You create beauty that points to the sacred," he told her. Maela laughed. "I point to nothing. I weave because the loom calls. If someone sees heaven in it, that's their seeing, not my doing." Torin was stunned. "But don't you intend meaning?" "Intention?" She paused, shuttle in hand. "When I weave, I don't think of meaning. I think of tension, how tight the thread must be, where the color shifts, how the light will fall. If I think too much, the pattern breaks." She ran her fingers along the tapestry. Meaning isn't made, it's revealed, when the maker gets out of the way. Torin sat in silence for an hour, watching her work. No grand theory explained what he felt. Awe, not for the art, but for the absence of self in its making. He left without another word. Years later, he burned all his books. He took up weaving. The final story, the one who came home. There was once a woman named Sora, who left her village at 20 certain that wisdom lived only in distant monasteries. She walked for years, through deserts, over mountains, across rivers, studying with masters, fasting, meditating, seeking the final truth. At 50, weary and hollow, she returned home. Her childhood house was gone. In its place stood a small garden, tended by a stranger. "Who lives here now?" she asked. "No one," the gardener said. "It's a community garden. Anyone may rest here." Sora sat on a stone bench beneath an old plum tree, the same tree she'd climbed as a child. She closed her eyes, and there it was. Not in a mantra, not in a vision, but in the scent of plum blossoms, in the warmth of sun on her skin, in the ache of her tired bones. Peace. Not earned, not achieved, just remembered. A child ran past, laughing. A sparrow landed nearby. Wind rustled the leaves. Sora began to weep, not from sorrow, but from relief. All this time, she thought, I carried home in my breath and never knew it. She never left again. The gardener and the rain. In a quiet coastal town lived a gardener named Ryan. Every morning, without fail, he walked the rows of his garden, checking soil moisture, trimming dead leaves, staking young tomatoes, whispering encouragement to seedlings. He didn't grow flowers to win prizes. He didn't sell his vegetables for profit. He gardened because it felt like tending his own soul. One spring, a long drought gripped the land. Weeks passed without rain. The soil cracked, plants wilted, neighbors installed sprinklers, hired water trucks, fretted over crop loss. But Ryan did nothing. A neighbor, Mila, finally approached him, worried. "Your garden is dying. Why aren't you doing anything?" Ryan knelt beside a drooping basil plant and gently touched its leaves. "I'm waiting." "For what? Rain?" "No," he said softly, "for the right response." Mila frowned. "But shouldn't you act?" "I could," Ryan said. "I could haul water from the well, install hoses, fight the dryness, but that would be acting from fear, not from what the garden is actually asking." He looked up at the sky, clear and endless. "The earth is teaching me patience. The plants are teaching me surrender. My practice isn't to control the weather, but to listen." Mila walked away unconvinced. 3 days later, rain came, soft at first, then steady, soaking deep into the roots. By morning, the garden stood taller, greener, revived. Mila returned, amazed. "You knew rain was coming?" "No," Ryan smiled. "I only knew that forcing an answer before the question is fully asked creates more dust." That day, Mila sat with him in the damp soil. She didn't speak. She just breathed in the smell of wet earth, and for the first time, listened. Ordinary mind doesn't rush to fix. It waits. It watches. It responds, not from panic, but from presence. The fisherman who fished without wanting. On the edge of a wide river lived an old fisherman named Bodhi. Each dawn, he rowed his small boat into the current, cast his net, and waited. Sometimes he caught many fish. Sometimes none. He never seemed disturbed by either. A young man named Jalen, newly unemployed and restless, began watching him from the shore. One morning, Jalen called out, "How do you stay so calm? Don't you get frustrated when you catch nothing?" Bodhi pulled in his empty net, coiled it slowly, and rowed back to shore. "I don't fish to get fish," he said, stepping onto the bank. "I fish to be with the river." Jalen blinked. "But what's the point if you don't catch anything?" "The point," Bodhi said, sitting on a smooth stone, "is to be here, hands on the net, eyes on the water, heart open to whatever comes. The river doesn't owe me fish, and I don't owe it my disappointment." He offered Jalen a cup of warm ginger tea from his thermos. "You're here because you lost your job, yes?" Jalen nodded, ashamed. "I feel useless." "Then come fish with me tomorrow, not to catch, just to be." Jalen agreed. The next morning, they sat in silence as the mist lifted off the water. No talk of careers, worth, or future plans. Just the lap of waves, the cry of gulls, the weight of stillness. By midday, Jalen hadn't caught a single fish, but for the first time in months, he didn't feel empty. Years later, Jalen became a teacher. When asked about his awakening, he'd say, "I learned it from a man who fished without wanting. He taught me that doing is enough when it's done with full presence." The child who knew nothing special. In a sunlit village school, A teacher named Anya introduced her students to mindfulness. Today, she said, we'll practice being present. Notice your breath. Feel your feet on the floor. The children tried, some fidgeting, some closing their eyes too tightly, one boy whispering, "Am I doing it right?" But one girl, Lumi, age 6, simply sat. She didn't practice presence. She was present. When Anya rang a small bell, most children jumped. Lumi just turned toward the sound, eyes wide, curious, unfiltered. After class, Anya asked her, "What did you notice when I rang the bell?" Lumi shrugged. It went ding, and then it stopped. No analysis, no need to be profound, just pure, unadorned experience. Anya realized Lumi hadn't forgotten ordinary mind. She'd never lost it. Adults spend years trying to return to what children naturally live. We call it mindfulness. They just call it being alive. The potter's second bowl. Recall Niran, the potter from part 2. After the seeker Ilan left, Niran continued his quiet life. One day, a storm washed away part of his workshop. His kiln cracked. Half his tools were buried in mud. His neighbor, worried, said, "All your work, ruined." Niran dug through the rubble, found one intact bowl, the one he'd given Ilan's twin Dot. He held it gently, then he placed it back on the shelf. "I wasn't making bowls to keep them," he said. "I was making them to be used." The next week, he rebuilt Dot. Not the same workshop, but one shaped by the storm. He began again Dot, not because he needed to recover, but because clay still called. This is ordinary mind in loss, not denying pain, Dot, not pretending all is well, Dot, but continuing, without drama, without refusal, to do what needs doing. The bus driver who drove in silence. In a bustling city, Ravi drove the same bus route for 30 years. Dot, same stops, same turns, same faces, aging over decades. Passengers rarely spoke to him. He was part of the background, like the engine, the seats, the fare box. But Ravi practiced. Not meditation on a cushion, but presence in motion. He felt the bus respond to his hands. Dot. He noticed the light change on buildings as seasons shifted. Dot. He knew which elderly woman needed extra time to sit, which child forgot his stop on school days. One afternoon, a passenger, a stressed executive named Tessa, snapped at him for driving too slow. Ravi didn't argue. He simply said, "You're safe here. Breathe." Tessa stared. No one had spoken to her like that in years. That night, she wrote in her journal, "A stranger on a bus reminded me I'm human." Ravi never knew Dot. He just drove his route, fully, quietly, ordinary to the core. The final teaching, it was never hidden. There was once a woman named Mira who spent her life seeking silence. Dot. She attended retreats. She read every book on stillness. She practiced noble silence for weeks at a time. Yet her mind remained noisy. Dot. She judged herself. If I were truly awakened, I wouldn't have these thoughts. One winter, she visited her aging mother in the countryside. Dot, her mother, Illa, never spoke of spirituality. She baked bread, knit socks, fed sparrows on the porch. One morning, Mira sat in the kitchen, overwhelmed by inner chatter. Dot, tears fell into her tea. Illa placed a hand on hers. "You're trying so hard to be quiet. You've forgotten how to listen." "Listen to what?" Mira whispered. "To this," Illa said, tapping the side of Mira's cup. "The spoon's still, the breath between thoughts, the space that holds the noise." Mira froze. Dot, And there it was, silence, not as the absence of sound, but as the presence beneath all sound. She hadn't needed to chase it, Dot. It had been holding her all along. From then on, she stopped fighting her mind, Dot. She let thoughts come and go, like clouds passing over a mountain, Dot. And the mountain, always still, always whole. Closing. The circle closes in the ordinary. Dear one, you don't need another story, Dot. You don't need one more technique. You already know this truth in your bones. When you wash a dish without wishing you were elsewhere, that's it. When you listen to a friend without planning your reply, that's it. When you stand in rain and simply feel it, that's it. Ordinary mind isn't found, it's remembered. And every time you forget, life gives you another ordinary moment, a ringing phone, a dirty floor, a waiting child, a quiet breath to remember again. There is no after enlightenment, Dot. There is only this, met fully. So tonight, as you rest, let your body sink into the surface beneath you. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a stream. Know that you are already enough, not despite your ordinariness, but because of it. This breath, this heartbeat, this quiet space between words, this is home. Sleep deeply, live simply, be ordinary, completely. You are already the light you've been seeking. The final realization. There was a woman named Sanya who practiced Zen for 30 years, attending retreats, studying texts, sitting through doubt and joy. She waited for a dramatic awakening. One ordinary morning, during silent meditation, it struck her. The awareness that's been listening to my breath all these years is already whole. She laughed softly. She hadn't been missing anything. She'd been wearing the glasses while searching for them. Enlightenment wasn't a destination. It was the recognition that you're already home. Closing reflection. Take a gentle breath. Now, feel the rise and fall of your chest. No technique, no goal, just breath. Natural, easy. This awareness that hears these words. This is it. Not a future version of you. Not. After more practice. This mind, right now, is the path. Tomorrow, you'll wake to an ordinary day. You'll drink tea, walk, work, rest. And in each moment, ordinary mind is available not as something to achieve, but as something to recognize. When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. When life calls, respond. You don't need to be special. You only need to be here. Already enough. Already whole. Already home. Sleep well, dear friend. Welcome to your ordinary, miraculous life.